From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
More than just a tree, the special meaning behind this year's White House Christmas tree. Record-breaking rain.
For the first time ever, we will probably plant more dryland corn than we will grain sorghum.
How recent rains are already changing planting plans for one farmer in the plains. As the clock winds down on getting a new farm bill done by the end of the year.
Pushing this off makes trying to fund it harder and harder the longer we go.
Why there could be even more delays right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Happening right now, Congress faces an ever-growing end-of-the-year to-do list. Everything from disaster relief to debt ceiling negotiations. But one thing that doesn't appear to be on the list is a new farm bill. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. Michelle, there's talk the delay could be even longer than originally thought.
Right, Clinton. Congress is quickly running out of time to get a new farm bill done in the lame duck, and it looks like it's getting pushed farther and farther down the priority list. So another one-year extension of the 2018 legislation is likely. However, with the aggressive agenda of the new administration, there are even thoughts a new farm bill could get delayed beyond 2025. The laundry list of congressional priorities in the lame duck is growing, and one topic not on the list is a new farm bill. 4 issues are holding back possible movement. One is nutrition spending, 2 conservation spending, and a third the commodity program.
It's the Midwestern commodities versus the Southern commodities, and the level of income support versus perhaps the level of crop insurance support that is desired. And then the fourth is how to pay for some of those proposed improvements to the bill, and that's the Secretary's authority over CCC spending.
Congress is also running out of time to get a farm bill done in a lame duck, and most blame Senator Stabenow. A stealth farm bill is being pushed by some farm state lawmakers that would increase reference prices and some crop insurance reimbursements, but it's a long shot. So another extension of the 2018 bill is very likely.
They've got to work out the full year appropriations or some sort of another continuing resolution. And there's a lot of interest in some sort of ad hoc or supplemental emergency assistance. I think without a doubt, they have to extend it in this lame duck for another year.
The Farm Bill process restarts with the new Congress and ag committees, but the Democrats could use Stabenow's text as a marker.
I would not be surprised that Senator Klobuchar would pick up the mantle if she assumes the role of ranking member and has a proposal for a farm bill that looks very much like this.
The fear, though, is that a farm bill is likely to take a backseat to other congressional priorities and the agenda of the new administration in 2025.
Pushing this off makes trying to fund it harder and harder the longer we go.
Given what I expect, which is a big reconciliation tax cut budget effort, it's hard to imagine that if a farm bill is not included in that there wouldn't have to be yet another extension.
Which could push a new farm bill all the way into 2026. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Some big improvements in the latest drought monitor. Right now, slightly more than 45% of the nation is in moderate to exceptional drought. That's down more than 4% from last week. Improvements are reported in West Virginia, where almost the entire state was in drought in August. The South, Midwest, and the Plains. But drought conditions worsen in the Northeast and northern Mid-Atlantic. In Southwest Kansas, one grower tells us it's the wettest November on record for him. He reports they've already seen more than 6 inches of rain, and he says normally that would be snowfall, and that is already changing his outlook on planting.
I was just talking with our local dealer here about how on our farm, for the first time ever, we will probably plant more dryland corn than we will grain sorghum because of the subsoil moisture we have in the grounds.
Yeager says this year's wheat crop wasn't fantastic, but says they really didn't get a beneficial rain until harvest time. But he says they just cut some of the best dryland corn they've ever had. Meanwhile, the West is getting hit with an atmospheric river. It follows deadly wind and blizzard conditions from a historic bomb cyclone off the Pacific Northwest coast midweek. An atmospheric river is like a fire hose of moisture in the air, and a bomb cyclone can work with it, causing several rounds of torrential rain. Forecasters were predicting the worst flooding to impact Northern California, with areas seeing a record 16 inches of rain in 48 hours. Rain was also expected further north and feet of snowfall at higher elevations. And there's a storm also in the east that's set to bring snow to the Catskills and into the central Appalachians. Meteorologist Jack Van Meter has a look ahead for us.
Taking a look at our radar picture throughout the weekend, there's only two main systems that we're really keeping our eye on. The first system is actually still in the Great Lakes region and just exiting to the east coast. Actually, the same system here that brought a lot of folks that first taste of winter. Now, the second system is still going to be spinning off in the Pacific Ocean, bringing in waves of moisture, that atmospheric river that folks have been talking about, especially again out there in Washington and Oregon. Playing this forward, we can't see most of the snow is actually going to be staying up in Canada. Good news there, and a lot of moisture for the East Coast. Again, two things of good news there, just because they've been very, very dry. And again, that low pressure that's spinning again off in the Pacific Ocean again, just going to give a couple more waves of moisture and a little bit of snow, especially for Nevada as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. Good news there. And then pretty much we're clearing out for the rest of the week as well. And do you remember your first experience with snow? Well, this is Calvin in Southport, Indiana. His mom, Cheyenne, shared this photo with us, and take a look at that face. So let's just say maybe it's not Calvin's favorite thing in the world, so hopefully he'll warm up to it. He's bound to have a few more opportunities in snow, especially in Indiana. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
A new survey of the rural economy has soared to its highest level in 15 months. For the first time since July of last year, the Rural Main Street Index rose above growth neutral. The survey of rural bankers from Creighton University has a new reading of 50.2. Now that's up from October's reading of 35.2. Surveyor Ernie Goss says yields were higher across the region, and that has offset some of the weakness in commodity prices. He says lower fuel costs and lower short-term interest rates also boosted farm conditions. One banker also said the regulation relief anticipated under the new Trump administration also contributed to a renewed optimism. And while that may be good news, the latest quarterly report from the Kansas City Fed continues to show falling on-farm incomes. The Q3 survey shows farm incomes in the Central Plains fell this quarter. 60% of ag bankers now report lower incomes compared to last year. Strong cattle prices are offering some support, but continued soft crop prices are hurting profits. They say that's weakening farm balance sheets and increasing demand for financing. Now, one bright spot continues to be land prices. Non-irrigated cropland rose 5%. Irrigated cropland was 0.3% higher, with ranchland up about 1.5%. And what about input costs? John Newton of Terrain publishing this graphic on X. He says one thing that will shape the farm economy next year will be the continuation of elevated input costs. Using information from the Economic Research Service and its cost of production estimates issued this month, he can see that corn will cost $871 per acre in inputs next year, slightly less than 2024. But soybeans will be $625 per acre, on par with this year. Cotton, it's predicted to increase to $900 per acre next year. French farmers taking to the streets to protest a potential trade deal between the EU and some South American countries. Farmers fear that will increase competition for French farmers. The countries include Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And both sides are pushing for trade negotiations to wrap up by the end of the year. These protests by French farmers were the largest since they took part in demonstrations last winter over concerns about cheaper imports and increased regulations. Now on Monday, tractors briefly blocked part of a highway near Paris. Others dropped manure in front of government buildings. One dairy farmer says they have the same demands as they did over the winter and that nothing has changed. The Dow surged more than 500 points on Thursday, but there wasn't enough optimism to pull the soybean complex higher. We'll talk markets coming up next. And later, signs of the season, the special meaning behind this year's White House Christmas tree in the country. Stock of Deere & Company rose after the company reported its fourth quarter earnings. Deere reporting Q4 earnings of $4.55 a share. That beat Wall Street's expectations. However, sales totaled $8.5 billion. That's below the anticipated $9.2 billion. For fiscal year 2025, Deere's now projecting net income of $5 billion to $5.5 billion. That's short of analysts' $5.8 billion forecast. Ford is cutting 14% of its European workforce. It adds up to about 4,000 jobs, mainly in Germany and the UK. The jobs will be eliminated in 2027. The automaker dealing with losses in its passenger EV business due to competition from Chinese EV manufacturers, regulatory issues, and low demand. Soybeans pulling lower for a third straight session. That's despite more sales to China and unknown destinations. AgDay's Michelle Rook is back with more on why export sales aren't driving prices higher in markets now.
Well, a down day again in the grains on Thursday. Don Rose, U.S. Commodities, is with us. And Don, soybeans hitting new contract lows and the rest of the complex lower. But, is it the lack of bullish news or is it the higher dollar? What's going on?
Well, I think it's just a number of things in the soybean market, Michelle. We have a large South America crop that's in the oven, 750 million bushels larger than a year ago if you count Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay. So that's, I think, an anchor on the market on rallies. You have the dollar making new highs going back to 2022, so our competitiveness. And then we have the Brazil and China inking a deal.
In addition to the fact that the soybean oil market keeps going lower.
The big thing that led the soybeans to the upside that really brought us off the map, brought us off of contract lows, was the soybean oil moving to the upside. And, when the soybean oil loses its strength, which it has the last few days, then it's easy for the soybeans to kind of pull back. And, we say that, and you've got the other product, soybean meal, sitting just right at contract lows, just off of contract lows. So, if you can't pull up with the soybean oil and you've got the meal anchored, the soybeans are just kind of stuck to move lower.
Yeah, it's disappointing, though, when you have solid weekly exports like we did in most of the grains. You get a couple of days of soybean export flash sales and you can't move the market.
Yeah, and I think the point is, from a trader standpoint, is when you don't react positive to positive news, that's not a good sign. And it means you need to move to a different price level and see if that news is enough to stimulate, if that's the price level. So, we've been in a trading range. We've been trying to hold just above these lows, and news was just too much here to hold the market together, Michelle, technically.
No doubt. And let's throw one more negative. Option expiration coming up on Friday, right?
Yeah, most definitely. We have option expiration coming up on bean oil, on soybean meal, on corn, and on wheat. And what that means is for all these calls and puts that are sold, we try to equal those out, and you move to some of these strike levels and lose some open interest that way. So that, I think, was a bit of a negative.
No doubt. Thanks so much, Don Rose, U.S. Commodities. Well, more AgDay coming up. Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
Taking a look at the newest drought monitor, actually just came out yesterday, and there's some big changes that we're starting to see and more positive changes, which is really, really good news. But let's first start with the bad news. Bad news is, again, looking at the East Coast, all the way from New Jersey up to parts of Maine even, still seeing some of that moderate, severe, and even extreme drought, again, in South New Jersey and parts of Connecticut, too, and Massachusetts. So, again, keep that in mind. That's why we, unfortunately, are still hearing all of those stories of some of the brush fires that are happening, again, out on the East Coast. Good news is relief is on the way later this weekend and into next week in the form of that system that's going to be moving out to the East Coast. Moving out west, we can see that we have huge improvements, especially in the southern plains and parts of the Four Corner states, especially Colorado, looking really good. Just a little area of extreme drought just north of Denver, but unfortunately we have had an expansion of the extreme drought in the Dakotas and into Montana as well. So something that we're, of course, keeping a very, very close eye on. Here's the feel-like temperatures for this afternoon. Now, the feel-like actually will take the wind into account, so it's kind of that wind chill factor. And as we can see, really cold air dipping down into parts of the Midwest and actually hitting parts of the South as well, where everybody's really going to be feeling like the middle to low 30s. And the warmer temperatures this afternoon going to be pretty much only in the desert. Phoenix, the only spot on the map where it'll actually be 81 degrees. Again, that feel-like temperature. So going to be an overall cool day for much of the country. Here's our jet stream going into this weekend. Obviously, here's that center of low pressure that is giving folks a lot of snowfall, or at least that first taste of snow. And here's a large high pressure ridge really going to be clearing out the weather again for much of the country going into the weekend. Do have a little bit of a trough that's trying to dig down up north, but not really going to pose a lot of major impacts, especially for a lot of the country going into late next week. Hot Springs, Arkansas, a high of 60 degrees and a low of 35 degrees. Sunny conditions there. Olivia, Minnesota, 32 degrees and a low of 24 degrees. Quite cold up there, so keep that in mind. And finally, Auburn, New York, rainy, 42 degrees and a low of 36 degrees.
Is a new crop protection helicopter in your future? We'll tell you about a new autonomous system next. And later, we're off to North Carolina and a Christmas tree that's really going places in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by Pivot Bio. Protect yield potential with a new mode of action in nitrogen. See how Pivot Bio fits into your fertility plan at talknitrogen.com.
We're looking ahead to model year 2026 and some new offerings from Bregault Industries out of Canada. The company unveiling 3 products, a 9000 I-Series air cart wing tank option, the Bregault Intelligent Control wireless seed controller, and a 7-plex folding 3545 Paralink hoe drill. The company says all 3 are targeted at increasing farmer productivity. And check out this massive grain cart. It's from Unverfirth Manufacturing. The 2520 has a 2,500 bushel capacity. The company says it's the largest dual auger model in its fleet. The new grain cart also features a U-Harvest Pro weighing system. Autonomous is a buzzword in agriculture right now, and now the technology is showing up in helicopters. A company called Rotor Technologies out of New Hampshire says it's working to develop a fleet of autonomous helicopters. They would be used to put out fires and spray crops. It has already built 2 of the helicopters and has started running test flights. It showed off the technology at an ag trade show in Texas this week, and the company is hoping to sell as many as 20 of them next year, most of which would be used by farmers to spray fields with pesticides and fertilizer. Now, the company is hoping to get Federal Aviation Administration approval by next year. Up next, a symbol of resilience is heading to the White House. The story behind this symbol of the season and its connection to this year's hurricane heartache in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. Help keep African swine fever out of the U.S. by updating your biosecurity plan. Learn more at aphis.usda.gov/protectourpigs.
A very special tree is on its way to the White House. Crews cut down the 25-foot-tall Fraser fir from Cartner's Christmas Tree Farm in Newland, North Carolina. It's being shipped to Washington, D.C., where it will be decorated and displayed in the Blue Room. The Newland area was hit hard by Hurricane Helene. The Cartner family hopes the tree will serve as a symbol of resilience for people who lost so much in the storm. Members of the National Christmas Tree Association have presented the official White House Christmas tree for the Blue Room since 1966. This year marks the 59th year a member of the association has presented the tree. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day on farm.